Hello, and welcome to the first normal episode of 2025. This is Heavy Hands. I'm your host, I'm your host, Connor. With me, as always, is Phil. Phil, welcome to a new year, a new era, a new paradigm in Heavy Hands.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. How are you feeling after your Herculean efforts in songwriting, sketch making, and editing last week?
I was glad that, first of all, that most people, I think, were very understanding of how late the episode was when they heard all the silly work that went into it. And that is what I mean by a new paradigm, because I am quitting the show to pursue a career in Vegas as a lounge singer.
Oh, God.
Did you like the song, Phil?
It was amazing.
I was pretty happy with it. I'm glad people seem to enjoy it, and hopefully we'll do something like that again next year. And as you pointed out on Twitter, I will have to rewrite and re-record because it includes many specific timestamp mentions of 2024. But that's fine.
Yep.
With a reception like that, I would happily do something like that again. I had a great time. And thank you to all of you.
Next time, you'll do it in advance so that you won't be, up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Boy, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That would be great. Actually, so we are going to be talking about UFC 311, which is a pretty good-looking pay-per-view, at least at the top of the bill. Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2 for the lightweight title is the main event. The co-main event, bantamweight championship on the line. Merab Dvalishvili defending against Umar Nurmagomedov. Multiple award winners showing up on this card, because then after that, Yuri Prochazka is fighting the returning Jamal Hill. Banner victor of this year's post-fight rationalization award. Before we get into all of that, though, this is something of a tradition. We have some nominees that were missed out by us. So let's see if I can recall a few. I tried to like them in the YouTube comments of the handies, and we can find out. Glue Factory Award nomination that we missed. Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates.
Yep.
That's a good one. We also had, somebody pointed out that the Oliveira Lentz fight of the year was clearly Oliveira Chandler 2, which we did get later in the episode. We also had, let's see. This is good broadcasting, by the way, where I'm just sort of scrolling through. We just have so many comments,
Oh, yeah.
Somebody was upset Yeah,
it's just such a tide of responses we get after every award show. In fact, after every show in general. It's just very difficult. It's just an entire sack worth of,
A sack is the way I would put it, yes.
Missives.
Somebody was upset that we hate Duplessis Strickland. They said most media considered it a top 10 fight of the year. And here you are pretending it was some disappointing and unwatchable demonstration of mediocre MMA. Correct. Except for the part where except for the part where I'm pretending to feel that way.
Yeah.
Damn, I knew there were some other ones.
We did get someone who was querying why, Mike Tyson, Jake Paul wasn't in the Glue Factory Award.
That was the other one.
And I mean, for the obvious reason, this is that is one of the most pathetic attempts at making glue I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get a near 60-year-old man in front of you as a, young athletic fighter, and you have a extremely dull sparring match after his legs completely stop working in the first 2 minutes. This is absolutely unacceptable.
No.
Mackenzie glues we'll never hire you again. You will never work in this town again.
You're dead in this industry.
Yeah, I mean, any lifetime achievements that he might have had towards adhesive manufacturing have been erased by that one single pathetic performance.
That's how it goes.
That's not how we make glue.
Yeah, that's how it works in this space, man. It's, what have you done for me lately? And, no good glue was produced in that performance. That's like, whatever Jake Paul derived from Mike Tyson's rotting bones would barely suffice to seal an envelope. That's not the kind of glue that we're trying to produce.
About craftsmanship.
That's right. And you did have a very, a bit of a come to Jesus moment, having to acknowledge the brilliance of Michael Chiesa's unconventional glue making technique. So it's not that you're just some old fuddy-duddy. Jake Paul did not do the job properly. He simply didn't achieve his goal.
Yeah, I'm willing to be flexible, but at the end of the day...
Don't I know it?
At the end of the day, stuff just has to be stickier than that.
That's right. And that's the lesson we all learned. A couple of also rans that we missed out on. Oh, the other one was, why did we not even mention Chris Weidman for the Saperbeck Award? And we really should have. My argument was that intent really matters when it comes to the Saperbeck. It is strategic foulness. So it's done to achieve a strategic goal. And in that sense, Michael Chandler is a god. You never have to ask, did he mean to do that? Because yes, he absolutely intended to do that foul. Chris Weidman, I think, had a moment of accidental genius with his eye poke combination, but I think it was entirely incidental because he's not in control of his body anymore. So he should have been nominated for sure. That was definitely a miss, but I don't think he would have won the Saperbeck anyway. I think, that one really is all about playing the game the way it's supposed to be played, or the way it is explicitly not supposed to be played, actually.
I mean, Michael Chandler currently sort of is astride the Saperbeck Award with the kind of consistent dominance that he's never actually been able to display in his MMA career. It will take a very special man to dethrone him.
That's right. All right, so that covers all of...
Disgusting one.
Let's take a very unappealing human being to replace him. So that covers all of the stuff, I believe, the obvious stuff we missed on the handies last week. And with that, let's go ahead and look ahead to the future, which, at least for the moment, appears pretty bright. Islam Makhachev, Arman Tsarukyan 2 for the UFC lightweight title. These guys had their first meeting in 2019. Both still regarded as prospects at the time. Of course, Makhachev won that fight and has not lost since. Tsarukyan lost that fight and has not lost since, except for a questionable decision against Mateusz Gamrot. Both have had phenomenal careers, and it was just the kind of fight where it was obvious they were going to have phenomenal careers, watching them compete, because they were more or less stalemating each other. It was the kind of fight where a couple different strategic decisions on the part of Tsarukyan, who was a little less experienced, and it may have honestly just seemed like a draw. It was that competitive.
Yeah, one of the few fights where, you look at these guys and you're like, surely we're going to see these two fights again. And then, yes, that is simply just completely true.
Yep.
One of the ones where you look at it and then you can actually just see both of them just get better from fight to fight afterwards.
Yeah. And they have.
Not only have they... Not only in that fight, not only did they display the kind of skill set where you'd just be like, oh, these skill sets on their own could possibly get each one to a championship, because these guys are able to wrestle offensively and scramble defensively in a way which, like, members of the UFC lightweight division simply can't most of the time. but both of them have become like increasingly potent.
Mm-hmm.
They've both become like finishers. They've both become more built out on the feet. You know, perhaps probably Islam in a little bit more of a structured way, but they've both become like genuinely dangerous strikers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, then we've seen like some pretty impressive and or horrific finishes from both of them on their way up. And yeah, it is as much as we expected to see these guys contend for a title again, it is rare to see that kind of sort of almost uninterrupted improvement.
Oh yeah.
That we've seen from both men.
I can't tell you the number of times in boxing and MMA I've been like, man, in 5 years we're going to get this matchup. And at least one of those guys will just completely shit the bed, 4 years before my expected deadline for improvement. It usually does not pan out in that sort of, when it seems so obvious that it will, it rarely is actually that obvious. So let's talk, briefly before we get into the improvements that might change it. Let's talk a little more about their first fight. What we saw about the matchup between the two of them. Because I fully agree with you, by the way, like either of these guys are championship material in this division. It's almost the misfortune of a guy like Arman Tsarukyan that he happens to share this division with Islam Makhachev. Cause he's had very little difficulty with his other opponents otherwise. But yeah, what did that super competitive first meeting, look like? What did we learn about how these guys fit together?
I think broadly what we might still learn today, which is that I still feel that like Tsarukyan might actually be the better athlete of the two.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just like pure explosiveness, his ability to like, he has some of the most disgusting hips in this division. And just like in MMA period, when it comes to scrambles and being able to work his way out of bad positions. But Makhachev is the more structured fighter. I think that was broadly the story of their first fight, which is that like at that time Tsarukyan was mostly like weird athletic kicks when he was striking, and then once he got into clinch exchanges with people, he would always be like, he would either just be able to force a takedown exchange, or he would be able to, if he would either be able to just like force the opponent off their feet, or if they happened to take him down, he would simply scramble through and get top position. Like it was a very like, whatever happens in this situation, it will benefit me because I am Arman Tsarukyan and I can, out scramble and out cardio anyone.
Right.
And instead, like, Makhachev had a number of just like reliable bridge points that he could use to get and regain control. And so what happened was that even though Tsarukyan was, like, I think, as I said, the more athletic fighter probably has the slightly higher physical ceiling, he was the one who started to tire out more because Makhachev was just putting him into worse positions and was always exerting less effort.
Yeah, he was so much more efficient than Tsarukyan. That was a huge difference. That he just wasn't going for attacks or positions or fighting for positions that were going to take a huge amount of effort to just try to keep and maybe still not even get. He was, whereas Tsarukyan was like shooting double legs at every single opportunity and getting stuffed and then getting back to his feet and shooting another double leg. It was all just dumping out energy. And, it cost him.
And I think one of the key things which, Makhachev was able to leverage his few, like, winning positions of the fight from was his ability to that we've talked about, several times, his ability to flow back and forth between like an offensive collar tie clinch game and his takedowns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think maybe 2-3 takedowns in the first round came from him drawing Tsarukyan into trying to exchange knees with him and then just tripping him once.
Yeah, the foot sweep.
Once the knee came back.
Yep.
Very low effort, very high reward. Whereas Tsarukyan was having to really, really force any kind of moments of offensive control that he had.
Yeah, and that's why I said at the top, like, it looks like a matchup where the difference maker might have simply been better strategic decision making from a young Arman Tsarukyan, because it did look like basically like a young gun versus OG kind of matchup. They had very similar styles. They matched up super well physically and technically in a lot of areas, but Makhachev made the better decisions. He had a better idea of how to win the rounds and preserve himself to still be in round-winning shape when the fight was nearing its close. And Tsarukyan fought like a hothead, which, fair enough. He had crushed all of his opponents up to that point with ease, as far as I know. So, yeah, the other thing is that I remember the commentary talking about how Tsarukyan had he and his team expected his kicks to be his advantage on the feet. And yes, Tsarukyan is a very good kicker. But clearly this version of Tsarukyan was not actually comfortable on the feet.
Yes.
He couldn't resist going for the super energy intensive wrestling attacks at almost every opportunity because he wasn't actually comfortable or relaxed. He didn't really seem to know how to handle himself and how to maintain control of the fight on the feet. He had to get back into his wheelhouse. I think that has very likely changed by now. Maybe not entirely. I have a feeling we may still sort of resurrect the original style matchup at a certain point in this fight when both guys get a little tired. But when things start out, I think Tsarukyan may in fact be a lot more willing to not throw himself at Makhachev with double leg after double leg, but to try to move around and work him on the feet. The problem with that is that Islam Makhachev has also become a pretty damn good striker. Like, pretty damn good. With the similar kinds of advantages to what he had in the wrestling and grappling in their first fight, which is that he, compared to Tsarukyan, is a much more efficient, relaxed, fluid striker who doesn't try to force things. And Tsarukyan is still sort of fighting with the legacy of being a super athletic prospect, even on the feet, that he is making some questionable decisions, leaving himself open, overcommitting. It's like the paradigm we saw in the wrestling matchup has just sort of transferred over to their striking games. That's kind of how it seems to me.
Yeah, for sure. And Makhachev has also developed his own kicking game.
He's a great kicker. Yeah.
Strong low kick, obviously big body kick, and he's not above kicking a stumpy opponent in the head.
He actually caught Tsarukyan with a high kick in their first fight. I think Tsarukyan landed a big body kick on him, and then Makhachev feinted and got Tsarukyan to duck into a body kick that hit him in the face. So even then, Tsarukyan may have been surprised to discover that Makhachev has 8 limbs to work with as well.
So I think one of the things that I'm concerned with for this one is the age discrepancy. So I do think that we're not getting their first fight. Their first fight, I think the other sort of comparison point for a first fight versus second fight thing would be Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman, right? I'm not saying that I expect the results to invert in any way other than that, but the first fight between them is both men, in the prime of sort of physical confidence, just being like, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to engage in wrestling, and I'm going to dump all my cardio because I have infinite cardio, because I'm young, and that's true. And I can just try as hard as I want because nothing will ever happen to deter me from that. And that Makhachev does this within a more like structured game plan is still, he's still essentially agreeing to a, draining cardio-based consistent wrestling fight with Tsarukyan. I think both men will almost certainly consent to spending much more time on the feet.
I totally agree.
Because they both know more about 5-round fights. They've both been fighting for longer. They've both gotten more confidence that they can hang out on the feet, and they are both older. Makhachev particularly. And they both know that you simply cannot do that all the time. It's not good for you, tactically within the process of a single fight. It's not good for your career either, because you will you'll probably injure yourself at some point, unless you are, Dvalishvili.
Well, who knows? Maybe maybe we've already hit the point where Dvalishvili is getting chronically injured and we just don't know yet. It's a very intensive style he has.
So I do expect there to be this to be much more contested on the feet, and for the takedowns and scrambles to be more sporadic. But I do think they'll probably be a fairly central, if not the central part of the fight. How did you feel about that Makhachev-Poirier fight? How much did you feel that, because I found myself thinking there's a few explanations for what's going on here. On the one hand, Poirier comes with a much better game plan than he did against Khabib. Poirier has also looked glacially slow in a lot of his fights. Makhachev doesn't look particularly quick in this fight. And he does look and he is struggling a bit, and he may just be struggling because Dustin Poirier is a good fighter who came with a good game plan. But I also did find myself wondering, he's never been a jump off the screen super athlete, and they don't last as long as super athletes do most of the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Is Islam Makhachev maybe starting to slightly slow down a bit? I don't know. What did you take away from that fight?
As an interesting thought, he is 33 years old. He's got 27 fights or something under his belt. I didn't really pick up on that. That's not to say that it's not a valid concern. That just didn't really occur to me watching it. I'll have to watch it again with that in mind. I thought it was a pretty shockingly good striking performance from Makhachev, actually. I thought he actually kind of totally handled Poirier on the feet for most of the fight. I thought he had him under control with his jab. I thought he was a much more fluid combination striker. And I thought he really understood the point of takedowns in a fight like this, which is to completely destroy the opponent's defensive reactions and find opportunities to get in with your strikes. I thought his counterpunching was pretty on point. And yeah, I actually thought it was a pretty good boxing performance from Makhachev, plus a few kicks.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, maybe there's something there. I'll have to watch for it and think, do either of these guys look slow? But I do think, look, Makhachev is still not a striker. I think this isn't the first time we've seen him do more striking and actually tire out more doing that than he does ever in the wrestling, which he's just 100% comfortable with. So I kind of attributed the exhaustion late in the fight to just the pace of the striking and the fact that he really had not dominated, but come kind of close to dominating Poirier for serious stretches And Poirier was just still there looking to exchange and looking to pressure. And I thought, given that, Makhachev held it together really well. I thought something that has always amazed me about Makhachev is his poise and his calmness. And that fight got really, really hairy, and at no point did I think Makhachev was like freaking out, that he was feeling overly anxious. I thought he felt more or less in control and relaxed the entire time, even as he got tired. So to me, it was just a good win against a surprisingly well-prepared Dustin Poirier.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, like it's the fight that I don't think I've really internalized that well. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many different angles you can look at it from. I think that sounds right to me.
Yeah, you know, Poirier was ready more than he ever had been before for the takedowns. He really made Makhachev fight for them. He put the pressure on. He put out a ton of output. You know, he tried to fight Makhachev in the clinches too. Like he didn't give Makhachev many places to rest. And I still felt that Makhachev was more or less in control most of the time. So I have a pretty high estimation of even very late career Dustin Poirier, though. Maybe that's coloring things. I think he's still pretty fucking good, actually. So we'll see. But my feeling is more or less that Makhachev remains a considerably more comfortable, flexible, relaxed striker between him and Tsarukyan. Because I've not been super impressed with most of Tsarukyan's striking efforts since 2019, really. There's always a little bit of understanding missing. Doesn't know when not to throw something with full power. He kind of almost throws everything with full power and full speed. He's not a particularly subtle feinter, or he doesn't seem to really know what he's trying to do when he's out there feinting, other than just not let the opponent, not make it obvious when he is actually going to throw. He's really, really prone to just leaping away in straight lines, when he feels pressured. And he's, and meanwhile Makhachev's out here like poking people with the jab and ducking them into uppercuts and then pivoting away. Very calm, very relaxed, very technical. So my feeling is that we will probably see Tsarukyan try to test the striking more. And I do think Tsarukyan is a more powerful striker. He's a harder puncher.
Yeah.
And he might be able to just make some craziness happen. And I think he'll probably keep the fight a lot more, steady on the feet for the early going. But I do kind of think in a similar way to the almost entirely grappling focused, dynamic we saw in their first fight. I just kind of suspect that Makhachev's calm, relaxed, efficient approach to striking will win out in the end. Because let's be clear, there will be some wrestling and grappling. Like, so Makhachev is going to use it even if he doesn't expect to get or keep positions on the ground. Tsarukyan, even this version, can't help himself. He has to try his wrestling. So it'll still be a part. It will still be taxing both guys' energy periodically throughout the fight. And if that happens at all to Tsarukyan, then I don't know. I mean, the other thing is he's not a guy who typically gasses out. Tsarukyan has an incredible gas tank. It's really just Makhachev and I suppose to an extent Gamrot, who have managed to make him look a little slow late in the fight. But part of that is, continually testing the wrestling and grappling just to keep him aware and to make him fight as hard as he possibly can, which he does every time he ends up in any kind of scramble. I think it's a fairly straightforward approach from Makhachev here. Could, prove successful. I'm picking Islam, if that's not clear.
Yeah. I guess one of the two other elements is that I find myself asking, obviously, you know, we're back to open stance again. Both men had close stance fights their last time out.
Mm-hmm.
That was an interesting question from Islam's perspective, is that, you know, how is he going to do against a southpaw? The other question is so yeah, there's the stances, and I think how well Tsarukyan does against southpaws is still a bit of an open question, because that's the other part of their first fight.
Yeah,
that, you know, there isn't really much in the way of striking, and he's mostly just doing things that someone who would be uncomfortable against a southpaw is doing, and aka, you know, flicking out head kicks and so on.
Yep.
And conversely, you know, we know Islam is very, very comfortable in the open stance matchup. I do find myself wondering, what does the directionality of this fight look like? Because that's where one of the places where, like, Islam against Poirier is very different from, like, Khabib's approach.
Yes, that's true.
Right, it's just the pure directionality.
Yeah, there were, of course, Khabib fights where there were some float like a butterfly fights from Khabib, of course, famously, but yeah, Makhachev is much more willing, he's just a lot more comfortable than Khabib fighting off the back foot. Like, his positioning, his footwork is solid, he knows his jab is there, he's defensively aware. He's much calmer in that situation. But, yeah. I don't know, to me it made sense against Poirier, because the best part of Poirier's game is not his pressure. You know, like...
Yeah. So what do you kind of expect against... I mean, with Poirier, it's just two possible options for doing it kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, Poirier's counterpunching off the back foot is extremely good. On the other hand, his cagecraft and cage awareness is also terrible.
Yeah.
So, you know, having a pressure-based game plan is essentially saying, I will embrace early risk in order to force him into checkmate positions.
Right. Uh-oh. Watch it, Phil. I felt my blood pressure spike when you made a chess analogy there. You're on thin ice, pal.
I need to make sure that they're like really bad chess analogies when I do that.
No, it was pretty good, that one. Force them into checkmating positions. Yeah, it made sense.
Yeah, I need to make sure that they're just like subtly wrong.
He's trying to put Islam Makhachev in Zugzwang.
Yeah.
Zugzwang is when Zugzwang, Phil, is actually an interesting idea. You do know what it is.
Yes.
He's lying. He just doesn't want me to talk about it. He's lying.
Well, now you can't say what it is, because then you'd be like conceding that you need to explain it to me. And so, in fact, you're in a position where you can't really do anything.
Damn, it's sort of a stalemate.
Yeah, something like that, huh?
I need to find an intermezzo.
So I do, all this to say, I think Arman has retained some of that, like, youthful vigor in terms of his approach, as well as his, like, his actual style.
Certainly.
I probably do expect him to be on the front foot, and I expect Islam to concede. I think that does lead to some early risk.
Yeah.
I still think there is just there's still just like a world where Arman just like Dariushes him. And we're just like, oh yeah, Islam was actually never like a super durable, hyper athletic guy. And there's at some point he can just get overwhelmed by a crazy athlete who just like goes after him.
We did see him get one-shotted by a hard-hitting southpaw very early on.
Yeah. Yep. Adriano Martins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and for all Arman's like obvious flaws on the feet, he throws in combination. He does, he punches into kicks, he punches into knees. He's very athletic and potent. Do think I have to pick Islam for the same reasons that you do.
Yeah.
But it is primed to be like a competitive fight. And if there's just suddenly a moment where Arman just overwhelms him.
Yeah, could happen.
Or if Islam just looks a bit older, cannot quite maintain the pace that he did in their first fight, then, suddenly things could change very, very, very quickly.
Yeah. To give my answer to your initial question about the directionality, I do see this as a situation where it matters a lot less for Makhachev what direction the fight is going. Cause, like I said, he's like actually good on the feet. And when I say that, what I mean is in terms of maintaining a good distance and a good position. He knows why he's moving his feet when somebody is pursuing and pressuring him, what kind of positions he's trying to get to, where he's not just going to get run over and still has options to answer back and back the other guy off if he needs to. He is a genuinely a pretty solid boxer in terms of like positional understanding in a way that most MMA fighters, certainly not ones with grappling backgrounds, are. Or are not, rather. So I kind of agree. I suspect he may allow Tsarukyan to pressure him some. I don't think early risk, of course. We could be in a situation where he just gets chin checked, but I think he will probably do that because he knows he can take some time to get some reads on Tsarukyan and frustrate him and make him show his cards. And I think he'd probably be right about that supposition. Because I just think he's just a lot more comfortable than Tsarukyan on the feet. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's they've both sort of grown, but Makhachev has grown in a much more cultivated way.
Mm-hmm.
Tsarukyan has simply sort of expanded the depth of his arsenal, whereas Makhachev has actually learned real principles. Principles,
yes, exactly. Yeah, this is the thing with Makhachev, that he may actually, in fact, have several disadvantages against Tsarukyan with age and actual just like peak physical ability and everything. But in a very real way, I think he's just a smarter fighter than Tsarukyan.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a very smart fighter. He's just a really, intelligent, thoughtful, adaptable guy who keeps getting better and keeps adding new tools every single time we see him. So, I'm going to pick Makhachev. I'm expecting a great fight. Like, as much as we're talking about how their first one was a clear Makhachev win, man, was it one of the best wrestling grappling contests we have probably ever seen in the UFC. Super exciting, back and forth competitive, amazing scrambles, crazy pace. And if we could get a taste of that this time around, I'll be happy. And then the fact that we are almost certainly going to see much more and much better striking from both men on top of that. I can't wait. It's a great fight. And I'm so glad they're not doing like Topuria Makhachev or something. I'm so glad they're doing this.
Oh, yeah.
We have been waiting for this
100%.
rematch. This is like a healthy division fight to make. This is great.
Yeah, if it goes right, and it probably won't, something weird will happen. That's just MMA.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that has potential to just be like that early front runner for fight of the year. Like, just to come out right out of the gate and just have a fight which has everything.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping for. It's, as I said, one of the rare cases where two guys come out, look great, just get better.
Yeah. Such a great matchup. It has such a great story. I have hardly heard the UFC emphasize that aspect. It seems like such an obvious promotional move. Like, granted, it will be in the promos, but we should have been hyping this up. Like Tsarukyan, the boogeyman in Makhachev's division. He's been yearning for years to get back his first and only real loss in mixed martial arts. That's the angle. And it's a good one.
Hmm.
So I can't wait. Fantastic fight. Great matchmaking. Two excellent fighters who have already combined to give us one tremendous contest in the past. So I have absolutely no complaints about this main event. It is going to be a good one. At the very least, it will be interesting. Even if it's the shittiest possible version, it will still be an interesting, meaningful fight to talk about. So, next week, can't wait to get back and discuss whatever the hell happens. But on that note, let's take our first break. When we come back, the co-main event of UFC 311, another title fight, Merab Dvalishvili versus fight like this person, handy winner, Umar Nurmagomedov. That's a good one, too. We're going to talk about it after this.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We're talking now about Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov for the UFC bantamweight title. And this is another great matchup. Umar Nurmagomedov, of course, picked up the Fight Like This Person award for process and good technique. Sometimes conflated with the Rebush Chalice at this year's Handies. And I think both you and I, Phil, have just been continually impressed by how much of an all-terrain fighter this guy is. Like Islam Makhachev, really. Somebody who, Umar may be a better athlete than Makhachev relative to his division. In fact, he almost certainly is. He's very fast. But somebody who is genuinely comfortable in basically every phase. Somebody who we didn't realize until we started seeing him do it can go out there against a bona fide, great striker for the division and just put a lid on him and keep him contained on the feet for 5 rounds. Never saw that coming. That's the kind of thing Islam Makhachev can do to an extent. It's the kind of thing Umar Nurmagomedov can do. It's a thing very few fighters who have the level of wrestling and grappling that both those guys have are actually capable of. It is some GSP type of shit. And he's taking on one of the most freakishly unsolvable championships I think I've ever seen in this sport, in Merab Dvalishvili, who is simply a special, unusually put together type of human being. I think we have to concede at this point that Merab Dvalishvili has some superpowers that other people cannot match.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said before, like his cardio is simply one of the most singular weapons that I have personally ever seen in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Merab's ability to just go for takedowns and to keep going for them and to just expend energy and then expend more energy and then still not even look particularly winded is literally one of the most freaky things I've ever seen in this sport.
Yeah. There is some kind of genetic mutation or something in Merab's lineage. Like truly, it is a natural athletic gift in a category we don't usually, although perhaps we should. I mean, clearly some people just have better stamina than others.
Oh yeah. 100%.
But it's not one of these screamingly obvious athletic gifts of the kind we usually, complain about from your Yoel Romero types. But it is very clearly an innate athletic gift of Merab's. You can't work to achieve that kind of cardio. His body just runs, the system runs differently. It uses fuel more efficiently. It recovers better. I don't know what it is. He is freakishly impossible to tire out. And he uses it. That is his weapon. He uses that to make his pace wrestling game work. And, and
the thing is with other physical gifts that we've seen from people, either whether it's chin or power or whatever, there's always like comparators. If you're like, this guy's the biggest puncher I've ever seen, and it's Conor McGregor, or it's Francis Ngannou, or it's John Dodson, or, it's Davison Figueiredo or whatever. That's the reason why I've listed 4 people. It's because there's 4, there's a whole bunch of them. You can be like, oh yeah, it could be this guy or this guy or this guy. Like, Merab, there is simply no doubt this guy has the best cardio I've ever seen.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, it's freakish. It's unbelievable. And you, I think, had an interesting way of framing that as the problem that Umar Nurmagomedov will attempt to solve here. Yeah. So tell me about cardio matchups.
Well, I mean, because one thing we've learned from watching Merab fight is that defending takedowns is just not going to be enough.
Yeah.
Like, if you are going in there and your plan is, Merab is going to take me down, and I will defend the takedowns, and then I will win when he has stopped doing the takedowns.
Yeah.
That is not going to work.
Step 1, defend takedowns. Step 2, question mark. Step 3, win.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen it tried too many times.
Step 1, defend takedowns. You will simply be doing it forever.
Yeah.
You will defend the takedown. You know what's coming next? Another takedown. And yeah, we've seen this from like 3 different flavors of incredible defensive grappler.
Yeah.
We have seen Jose Aldo, the greatest neutralizing space control takedown defender of all time. Admittedly, didn't actually get taken down very much, just got held up against the fence, but he still lost very clearly.
Probably the greatest pure takedown defender of all time. As in, you shoot on Jose Aldo, you will not get it.
We've seen Piotr Jan, a sort of offensive scrambling type takedown defender.
Yep.
Who's, going to punish people once they've taken him down, and he's going to get top control on them, and he's not going to be that easy to take down in the first place. Again, like, completely hopeless. And then we've just seen, one of the greatest pure wrestlers ever to go into mixed martial arts against Merab Dvalishvili, and
Henry Cejudo.
Yep. And shit ain't working.
Yeah.
Shit ain't working because he can just keep trying again and again and again and again and again. And frankly, even if it doesn't work once, which it probably will, the fact that you've been just trying to defend takedowns for an entire round will mean that you're going to lose it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, this is not to mention the sheer quantity, if not necessarily quality of strikes that Merab throws in with his wrestling attack, which works much better than it should because you have to focus so much on stopping the wrestling. So like the whole game blossoms out from this simple proposition of you can defend my takedowns for now. That's the game. And you had an interesting comparison before we started recording. You were talking about like the Makhachev Tsarukyan matchup. You said that
because this is where like you can look at the normal way in which cardio and technique can interplay in a fight. Because let's say, Arman's like younger and more athletic, and he's got better cardio than Islam does. He's got 90 out of 100 in terms of cardio. And Islam has like an 80 out of 100. Because Islam can box him into positions where Arman has to work harder than him. Arman's like cardio eventually kind of slips down faster than Islam's does until the point where he is more tired than Islam.
Because in that kind of contest, the takedown defense is kind of its own reward in that way because it takes a toll on the opponent. If you stuff 5 takedowns against most opponents, either the 6th is going to be much sloppier or they're going to stop going for them because it's really exhausting to continually go for takedowns. And that very much did happen to Tsarukyan, who shot way too many double legs that were with technical precision stuffed by Makhachev. And it was Tsarukyan who he tired out, and it evened out the athletic playing field by the end of the fight.
Yeah. And the problem with Merab Dvalishvili is that he has like 160 out of 100 in terms of his cardio.
Yeah.
And if he blows his energy on 10 takedowns that you just sprawl and defend, the person who will be more tired at the end of it is you. So the question, I mean, and, you know, as, again, something we have to reiterate every single time, this can't last forever. At some point, Merab's game will simply disintegrate. You know, at some point, something will go wrong. He will get injured and get some kind of injury cascade, and his game will absolutely disintegrate almost on the spot.
Mm-hmm. It's not like we've never seen him badly hurt in a fight. It's not like we've never seen some rough spots from Merab in a fight. So once something slips, those moments might become disastrous.
Yeah. And just in general, like his ability to just, you know, dump cardio infinitely. If suddenly he can't do that.
Oh yeah, it's over.
It's almost instantly going to be over. But, you know, everything, we always have to assume that he's going to be broadly the same and he's still going to be able to do what he does. And the question is, like, you have to be able to punish him. Every takedown attempt defense cannot be its own reward in fighting off Merab Dvalishvili's takedowns. You have to be able to punish him in one way or another. This is why Davison Figueiredo might have been an interesting person to fight him, because Davison has, like, a genuine, like, submission threat game, which he might have been willing to use, as well as obviously being, like, nuclear level powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing you have to do is you have to be able to punish his entries. You have to be able to punish him from the outside, and you have to be able to do that without fear of the endless takedowns that are coming your way.
Yeah.
And it does feel like, I don't know whether this is wishful thinking because we like Umar or not, it does feel like Umar is as well configured to do that as anyone we've ever seen.
It doesn't feel certain he's going to win. Let's be clear about that. I do not feel at all certain he's going to win. But
this is literally the most, like, unfair weapon in MMA history we're pretty much talking about here.
Yeah, the most uniquely unfair weapon I think we've seen. But I do agree. I mean, if you talk about, I think the way you put it before is that against Merab, your takedown defense cannot be takedown defense because you're going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just sap more energy from you over the run of the whole fight than it will Merab. This is a very good point in Umar's favor, something I was really hoping to see from Sean O'Malley, and we very much did not see any of the right decisions made, is that, like Islam, I would say even a little more consistently good at it. Maybe he started from a better place of having a natural understanding of striking earlier in his career than Islam did. But Umar can, in fact, defend a lot of things, takedowns and strikes, both included, with positioning. Just by maintaining a good distance, keeping the jab as a dynamic barrier between him and his opponent, and cutting angles when the opponent ultimately overcommits to something in an effort to get to you. You know, this is a principled approach where simply by ensuring you stay on a good angle, you protect yourself and you maintain a healthy distance from which you can still be effective. If you're able to do that, you can turn an awful lot of MMA fighters' games into the old Mike Winklejohn switch-up. You know how you used to say, Phil, how the Winklejohn switch-up is ultimately a joke because so many of the switch-ups, both moves can be defended in exactly the same way?
Yep.
Is it going to be a high kick or is it going to be a push kick? Okay, what if I step back? It's going to be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what positioning gets you, even against much better designed pressure striking games. If you can keep control of the distance and the angles, then you can kind of have it's a little bit of a one size fits all. The opponent at the very least is going to have to take bigger risks and commit more to try to compensate for the good position you have embedded yourself in. And so, yeah, it makes it a lot easier if you have good positioning to deal with the nightmarish, am I going to punch you or am I going to level change switch up, which remains a top tier sort of concept in MMA to this day and is a core of Merab's entire game. I agree. I think because of that, the wonderful switch stance, jabbing control performance we have seen from Nurmagomedov on the feet, that is how you stop Merab from beginning that downward spiral where you start defending his takedowns and then 3 rounds later, you're still defending them and then one gets through.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be preventative rather than trying to treat the ailment by just inviting it.
Yeah. And what we've seen from Umar is that, yeah, he's very quick. He's accurate from either stance, and he's very long.
Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily, I mean, not necessarily in terms of like his, how big he is, not, he's not Sugar Sean O'Malley or anything, but I think he's definitely more assertive than O'Malley is.
Mm-hmm.
And, partially because he can afford to be. When it comes to like takedowns and grappling and so on, he doesn't really fear much, because this is the other equation, part of the equation, obviously. Not only could you have to punish Merab, but the costs for getting taken down cannot be too high.
Right. You do actually have to be able to deal with the wrestling too. Yes, you must.
Yes, this was O'Malley's problem, in that he could only make himself go for the most what he considered to be perfect strikes.
Yeah.
And he was fighting Merab because he knew that once Merab had a hold of him, he had no chance.
Which paradoxically made him throw much stupider strikes with worse setups that worked not as well as they would have if he'd been a lot more sort of relaxed, a lot more assured about just letting them go.
Yep. But yeah, Umar has so I'm going to be interested to see a few things. I think, what stance Umar fights from, as usual. I think he's very adept at fighting from either stance. One of the very few fighters I think you mentioned last week that has a genuinely good jabbing game from either stance.
Yep.
He also just keeps a really high diet of kicks up, meaning he doesn't necessarily have to close range on his own terms against Merab.
Yeah, just to score points.
Yeah. I think the fight that I was looking at to see how Umar kind of dealt with someone, there's no comparators for Merab, which is the obvious problem for anyone who fights him. But I was like, who did I think was probably the closest analog that Umar's fought? I think it might be Sadyakub Kakhramonov.
Still,
in terms of
should not have been cut.
Pace.
Never forget, should not have been cut from the UFC.
Yeah, never forget.
Good fighter.
Yep. Doing super well against the much worse Nurmagomedov before he got
unfairly
choked. And other than that, has simply barely lost, apart from to Umar and one other guy where he just got flying kneed in the first few minutes or whatever.
Good fighter.
Very good fighter. And Umar really does, exactly what you would want to see from someone who's fighting Merab, in that he just, puts a lid on Kakhramonov. He just counterpunches him. Whenever Kakhramonov's setting up an entry, Umar's just poking at him with kicks. And when Kakhramonov tries to burst in and get a clinch or a takedown, Umar's already throwing his hips back and getting double underhooks. I think there's definitely a question in this fight that that I think was sort of slightly shown in that was that there was a reasonable amount of empty clinching, and you cannot really afford that against Merab. Merab does not really allow empty. Every time you are empty clinching against Merab, the cardio equation is tilting against you.
Mm-hmm.
And it also kind of it illustrated that, Umar is maybe not the most potent takedown threat in the world without that kind of incredible takedown, that incredible timing to help it work as it did against, say, Corey Sandhagen, where a lot of his takedowns were him drawing Corey on. So it's not like a perfect performance, but it did leave me quite encouraged because, again, it's just like a very clear, very controlled win against someone who's like clearly very hard to have a clear control win against. I think I am curious though. I'm curious to see what the grappling looks like because obviously the other way to like change that takedown cardio equation into something which might work in your own favor is to take Umar down yourself. I mean, to take Merab down yourself. And I'm curious to think, like, is Umar going to hit his own counter takedowns on Merab Dvalishvili? I think the answer is probably yes.
I mean, it seems like it would
at least be worth a proposition.
It would at least be worth a try, right? If you're confident enough, and I think he should be, that you can survive one bad round, or you can afford to dump some energy, and then get back on your bike and recover, which is an ability that you gain when you do have the sort of positional striking approach that Umar has. You can actually get on your bike and recharge. Then yeah, absolutely. Try to mix that in. Test his takedown defense. If he could stick Merab on the bottom, I mean, what a statement that would be, and how much that might change the fight to come. Yeah. I don't think it should be. I think if he goes in there with the idea that he's going to out-wrestle Merab as his winning game plan, he's going to lose for sure. But, absolutely, as a part of the process, it sounds, why wouldn't you try it? It's his game.
Yeah. You gotta be confident.
Yeah. I mean, shit, we saw it doesn't work out all the time. We just saw Amanda Hebush get submitted in a fight where she was largely out-grappling Mackenzie Dern and keeping top position on her a lot, something she did in their first fight too, and she got caught in an armbar. Obviously, it's dangerous. It's not dangerous in that kind of way against Merab, though. It's not like it's singularly dangerous. As long as you are assured in your ability to deny the wrestling for a minute or two at a time, then it seems relatively low risk to go in there and try some wrestling of your own.
Yep.
I gotta be honest, man, like, I am tempted to pick Umar here.
Yeah.
Like, here's the other thing,
though, is that...
Yeah, go on.
This is one of those fights where I came in expecting to pick Umar, and then I looked at footage, and then I picked Umar. And that doesn't kind of jive with who Merab is as a person and a fighter, because, with how insanely unbeatable he's looked once his game is actually running. I don't think I should be this confident, is what I'm saying, and I'm wondering whether I'm just being biased because I think Umar is cool.
Well, here's the thing that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of that Sean O'Malley fight.
Yeah.
And as much as it was a dreadful performance from Sean O'Malley. He came in with nothing correct prepared. Or if he did, this is the question with that fight is like, was that the game plan? Because if it was, the game plan sucked. And if it wasn't, then it was still a shitty game plan because whatever you cooked up, clearly you were not capable of actually executing it. You did not understand the assignment. Whatever that was, what we saw, whether it was accidental, it was instinct, or it was deliberate, it was bad. And yet, it was not a great Merab performance either. He gave Sean O'Malley and his strikes a lot of respect. He did the classic Merab thing where at a certain point in the fight, he just went on the back foot and started running around, and he is terrible when he commits to that. He's really bad off the back foot because his striking defense is shit. His footwork is bad, and he still was like, oh, I'm well ahead in the 5th round. I'm going to run around and do nothing. This is something Merab has done before, like where he just seems to kind of forget what his actual game is for a round at a time. And it allowed Sean O'Malley to like put some pressure on him and land some strikes. And it just made me think like, man, if Sean O'Malley had been even remotely prepared, if his coach hadn't been this like, cigarette smoking guy who's like wants to be a celebrity himself and is starting to seem more and more like a bit of a yes man, how much better might he have done against Merab? And I look at Umar and I'm like, this guy just does the stuff I was wanting Sean O'Malley to do in every fucking fight. He's just P's and Q's, I's dotted, T's crossed, a consummate professional striker who also has that sensational wrestling game in his back pocket. It's not been tested much, by the way, but he does currently have 100% takedown defense in the UFC. It's not been tested much. Most people don't want to grapple with him, but he has effortlessly stuffed the takedowns that have been attempted against him. It's clearly on par to be a component of an otherwise striking focused approach against Merab. And it's just, he is doing exactly the kind of stuff I was, wishing O'Malley might be able to do that he just clearly didn't train for.
Yep.
This is the kind of striking I think you need to beat a guy like Merab. So, what does Merab's game look like if it's not just his takedowns getting stuffed, but he can't track the guy down? What does his game look like then? It probably looks like shit. Cause on its own, in a vacuum, his striking is terrible. It only works because of the pace and the wrestling threat.
That is what I keep finding myself thinking. And I just find myself thinking, am I missing something?
We must be. We must be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we
speak. Yeah, he just looks like he's willing and able to, stick and control someone, a wild opponent. You watch that guy Romanov fight. It's a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
He's clearly improved since then, but it's still just like a frighteningly clean and controlled performance on the back foot against someone who's just
not unlike Merab.
Yeah, just like very difficult to control, just wild and unpredictable and aggressive, and he just does it really pretty easily.
Yeah.
He gets clipped, I think, once or twice.
Yeah. He still gets clipped once or twice these days. He also seems to have a pretty good chin, which is another good sign.
Yeah. I think I am gonna pick. I'm just gonna go with my initial gut feeling, which I've only reinforced, which is in itself now making me feel concerned that I've just completely missed something. And I think I'm gonna go through more.
You gotta feel very uneasy when you come in like, I'll change my mind, and then you just like, actually, all the things I thought were true. Yeah, something's missing. We will be surprised. But I'm with you, I know, I very much realize what the two of us both picking an upset challenger over champion win means.
Is it an upset? I'm sure he's not. I'm sure he's the favorite.
You think so?
Yeah, people super hype up anyone from Khabib's gym.
Let's see. I mean, it's very unusual for any challenger to be a favorite. You were correct, my friend. Umar currently, at least according to this one line, at minus 334. That's way too wide. What are they thinking?
Insane.
What are they thinking?
That's mad.
So even if you agree with our pick, you go bet your children's future on Merab Dvalishvili at plus 250 underdog odds. That doesn't make sense to me. Merab is such a unique challenge.
Also, that's not how betting. I don't know if that's how betting underdogs. I'm not sure if that's how betting lines where you think the guy will lose, but not by as much as the bet. A part of this as part of a diversified betting strategy because there's value here. Do not bet your children's future.
It's just your children's. It's not your future.
Don't think he's gonna win.
It's just your children's. It's like it's your future. But what's the big deal?
Yeah, screw him. What would Carl McLachlan advise?
Something I ask myself many times throughout the week. What would Kyle do? And that's why I'm constantly calling old women cunts at the grocery store. Shut up, you slag! Thanks, Kyle. But I mean, I really do think like, Umar should not be a massive favorite over such a unique threat like Merab, but I don't think it's insane that he does have much better odds than everyone else who's fought Merab, because it makes sense to me. His style, I think, is just really well made to handle somebody whose primary weapon is their cardio and their ability to make much less educated strikers deal with threats more than they're able to keep up with. I just don't think that's really Umar's weakness.
Yeah, he's just that guy.
He's good. I know that much. He's very, very good. All right. Well,
he's not the minus 300 guy. I mean, it might look like he might look like being the minus 300 guy.
It's possible, yeah. If he goes in there and it's just like a super upgraded version of what he did to Kakhramonov, and Merab kind of doesn't know how to get the ball actually rolling. You know, how many bad first rounds have we seen from Merab? Again, what does Merab look like if he can't get that avalanche started? I think the answer is he looks pretty bad.
Yep.
So we'll see. It's a very exciting contest. It could be a massive breakout moment for one of the sport's clearly just best prospects / contenders against one of the sport's most historically unique champions in Merab Dvalishvili. A really tantalizing contest. Can't wait to talk about it next week, but let's take one more break here. When we come back, post-fight rationalization winner, a man who took the category by storm so impressively that I'm taking very seriously the suggestion from some commenters that we need to have a Jamal Hill award in future iterations of the Handies.
Keyboard Warrior Award, I believe.
Absolutely. We gotta do it.
A best posting, yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much worth considering.
Yeah. So that is Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
It's the internet, bro. Remember. And with that, we initiate with the traditional slogan, we initiate yet another discussion of the god, Jamal Hill. Man, can I just say, Phil, at the start of this, look at the two matchups above this. Granted, those are both championship fights, but they are representative of the top level of their respective divisions. Makhachev and Tsarukyan, incredibly good fighters. Dvalishvili and Nurmagomedov, incredibly good fighters. Who is carrying the banner for the people on the fringe of another title shot category at light heavyweight? That's right. It's the guy who got knocked out twice with no improvements whatsoever between fights by Alex Pereira, and the guy who also got knocked out by Alex Pereira, but only because referees are very, very unfair. It's just a stark it's a stark contrast to see what light heavyweight has to offer after looking at 155 and bantamweight.
I've gotta say, I fucking love this lineup of 3 fights.
Yeah.
This is, for all that we criticize the UFC, these 3 fights in a row is amazing booking.
Yeah. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the absolute highest level of the sport, the best divisions, the best fighters, just 4 of the most, unique, 3-dimensional, skilled fighters that we've seen. And then, in the run-up to it, it's these guys.
2 big oafs.
I fucking love it. It's just the, Jamal Hill, who just, thinks he's good. and, it has absolutely, no footwork, and...
No footwork that's not even close to describing what is happening with Jamal Hill's legs and feet during a fight. It's anti-footwork.
Yeah. Just sort of flaps his way around cage and eventually tries to punch someone really hard.
Yeah, simultaneously.
And Prochazka, who just is, the Dragon Ball Z approach to getting better at mixed martial arts, where he's just gonna if I scream louder and put in more effort, then I will unlock the next Super Saiyan level. And it's amazing. It's such good matchmaking. It's such an incredible palate cleanser for the really good fights coming up. Is that it's just it's going to be action packed. It's going to be fun.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be so silly.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's a perfect appetizer for the.
And I don't know who's going to win either.
Well, I will say right off the jump then, I have a pretty strong feeling Yuri Prochazka is going to win.
Yeah, I've heard this.
Because he's going to pressure Jamal Hill, and Jamal Hill's, again, footwork. The man is somehow simultaneously knock-kneed, pigeon-toed, and duck-footed all at once. I don't know what is going on. He has his legs move like they are 40 years older than the rest of his body. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
He has an unathletic lower body. It's really something special. And
basically everything below the nipples.
It's trash. You heard it here first. Jamal, if you happen to listen to this episode, Phil thinks you have a trash dick.
It's more the slight pot belly that he tends to have.
Well, I'm not gonna go. I know where my lanes of attack are. I'm not gonna criticize him on the pot belly. But the idea of Jamal Hill agreeing to get pressured, which I think he will anytime somebody insists, and then putting himself in a position where he must knock out Yuri Prochazka before Yuri Prochazka knocks him out. I don't know, man. I don't think Yuri's gotten better at all. I don't think he's really very good, all things considered. But I think we're in danger of suspecting that Jamal Hill is anywhere close to the level of Alex Pereira, which he very clearly is not.
Does he have to be close to the level of Alex Pereira?
Well, Prochazka's...
Does he have to be close to the level of, Rakic, but tough?
Rakic, who also lost to Prochazka?
Yeah, but Rakic, but tough.
Yeah, I guess. I think Rakic is pretty tough, actually. I think
box.
He can box better than Jamal Hill.
Can he?
Yes. Yes.
I guess he can, yeah.
Yeah, uncontroversially, yes. I think you're forgetting. Go pull up a little Jamal Hill footage and watch him strike a little bit. I think you're forgetting just how much this guy is nothing but a knockout punch. He's a mess. He's a horribly put together technician on the feet. Like tragically bad. Tai Tuivasa is a better technical striker than Jamal Hill. It's just that Hill is fast and tall and long, and he hits like a truck. And most light heavyweights are trash. I mean, here's a question. Who has Jamal Hill beaten at light heavyweight?
Glover Teixeira.
Yeah. An ancient Glover Teixeira.
Extremely, 100 years old.
Yes. A 100-year-old Glover Teixeira. Went 4 rounds with Thiago Santos in 2022. And then Johnny Walker, Jimmy Crute, got submitted by Paul Craig.
Yeah.
He's not good. And the guys that he's outstriking are almost without exception very, very old, or themselves have completely dysfunctional games. There's a world of difference between Johnny Walker and Yuri Prochazka, and that world is not technical in nature. But in terms of just effectiveness, Yuri Prochazka's game makes so much more sense than Johnny Walker's. It works for a reason. He's not unlike Merab, actually. In that most light heavyweights get into a fight with Prochazka. They have all kinds of success, and then 4 minutes go by, and they start to get tired, and the fight is still happening, and Prochazka's still coming. And it works for a reason. And I just don't think Jamal Hill's faced anything like it. In fact, the only time he's faced any kind of consistent pressure striking at all, it was Alex Pereira knocking him out instantly with ease. I don't know.
Yeah, that is true. Yuri has actually beaten some people who have fought well or had good performances.
And he's had success against the good fighters who beat him too. It's not like he had no moments even against Pereira. Like, he's gonna, you give him enough time, some crazy shit is gonna happen. He will insist. I just think, I think Jamal, this is the extra funny, like, dressing on top of Jamal Hill, the Jamal Hill, keyboard rage salad, is the fact that he's talking all this shit and it's so unfair and wait till you see me again. And the reality is you watch Jamal Hill fight for 3 minutes and you're just like, this is the shit. This is what you're so confident would have worked if given more time? He's bad. He's not good.
Yeah. Jerry also is not bad, but, Jerry is also bad,
yes.
But Jerry covers space and, also hits hard and, tries to feint his way onto the inside and,
he throws combinations.
Yeah, but I think it's more the covering space thing. I think it's that if Yuri is moving forward, then Jamal is going to have a way of like getting out of the way of Yuri throwing punches at him. I think he's quickly going to realize that he can't do that without his feet like knotting around themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying Yuri's a good, well put together fighter. They're both of them are good in a very in an exclusively light heavyweight kind of way, which is to say, not good.
Yep.
But I just think Jamal's probably going to let. Now let me say this. This is assuming that Yuri is still Yuri after those 2 Pereira fights.
That is a good point. Yeah.
Because those might have been a life-changing pair of knockouts there.
Yeah, that is the thing about Jamal's fury, I think, may at least keep him bound to his fighting style for a while.
Mm.
Because he's going to be like, he's just going to be constantly angry. And, he can't really think about, like, mortality in the same way that Yuri obviously did, because he's just immediately gets furious as soon as it happens. So he'll just go back out there and do his same thing and just be extremely cross. But Yuri clearly, Yuri was clearly shook after he fought Alex.
Yeah.
It's just a question of will he be shook against other people?
They say a true samurai must make peace with his own death before every battle. And I think Yuri probably.
He did fight,
I was going to say that too. Yeah, I think Yuri was doing that, but that's like you spend your whole life talking about how you're prepared for death and you're fear, and then you find yourself actually dying, and you're like, no shit. It's worse than I thought. No, he did fight Rockich. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah.
After the first Pereira fight, and it was a classic Yuri performance. It worked like the process usually works. So that to me is a good sign. It's just the fact that now he's been knocked out again, arguably even worse.
Yep.
Actually, definitely even worse than the first time. So maybe something has changed, but that Rockich fight makes it look like Yuri, he only knows how to fight one way. And he knows for certain now it doesn't work against Pereira, but it has worked within the last 2 years on another high-level light heavyweight contender, so why wouldn't it work against Jamal Hill, who, again, is worse than Alexander Rakic in so many ways.
Yep. You know what I want to see from this fight? If Yuri wins?
What's that?
I want to see an exchange of tweets or something along those lines where just Jamal is just saying enraged things at Yuri, and Yuri is just like serenely responding with stuff like,
yeah,
a true warrior embraces fate in defeat or victory. Mortality humbles us all, brother. And then Jamal's just like, I'll humble you next time! The ref doesn't save you by calling an end to the round after 5 minutes, because I was just about to finish you.
Step to me next time and see what happens, pussy! And then Yuri responds, leaves in the rain, falling water over me. Autumn has now come. A little haiku action for you. That was the best I could come up with off the cuff.
Pretty good.
It had the right number of syllables, I think.
Yeah. That's all I hope for. Just like some Jamal Fury matched up against Fury just saying batshit samurai stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, everything around the fight, aside from the fight itself, is going to be great, I hope. But the fight itself should be...
The fight itself
delicious. Should be absolutely delicious and unnutritious. A wonderful double quarter pounder of a fight.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm actually going to reasonably confidently call Yuri Prochazka in this one. Assuming he still looks like Yuri Prochazka, I have never once been convinced by Jamal Hill as like a serious elite fighter. I don't think his game is well put together at all. I think he's running 100% on attributes, and those attributes don't really make him all that special in the land of light heavyweight. Like being a big dude who punches really hard, that's the whole division.
Yeah.
I think he just...
Yuri is the ultimate attribute fighter in this division.
Totally. And I think Jamal Hill really just had some right time, right place in terms of the matchups he got to get to that really... It was a weird time in the light heavyweight title picture when he became champion.
It really was. Yeah, I mean, the other one is obviously Johnny Walker, but Johnny Walker is fragile and mentally unfocused.
Mm-hmm.
But Yuri has attributes, and he's trying to use them really hard all the time, assuming that Alex Pereira has not completely broken him. So yeah, I'm sold. Jamal is just actually not very good.
Yep. All right. I'm satisfied with that. Again, should be amazing to watch in a very different way from the main and co-main events. It should be awesome.
It's just a wonderful combination of fights.
Yep. Well, there is still a decent amount of other good stuff on this card, which we will hopefully have a good opportunity to get to next week. Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano is a cool lightweight fight. Kevin Holland versus Rainier de Ridder. That one was made just for us. That's a comedy fight.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was it was not an accident. And Peyton Talbot is being given Raoni Barcelos, which feels like it might be too much, right? And they might ruin Peyton Talbot, but also he seems so naturally good already that I'm pretty confident he can beat Raoni Barcelos. Still a very interesting fight with a lot of significance for the future of a real blue chip prospect's career. I will also remind you before we close out that it is sumo time once again. Every 2 months, we get another 15-day Grand Sumo tournament, which means that Miguel Class will be joining me 2 different times this month on the Heavy Hands Patreon, patreon.com/heavyhands, for our sumo recap show, Heavy Henka. So the January basho or tournament just started a couple days ago. That means you can probably expect our mid-tournament recap episode to at least be recorded sometime later this week. And I'm really going to endeavor to get that up in a timely manner. But that's always fun. Miguel and I love sumo. We like to talk about how attractive we find obese male bodies. And it really is just a very cool sport, which is super refreshing when you spend as much time as we do watching and talking about MMA. Something really pure about sumo as a combat sport. So please join us on the Patreon for Heavy Henka. If you're not into sumo yet, now's the time. You will have a surprisingly good time watching it, I promise you. And, yeah, find us on social media. Phil is on Twitter at Evil Greg Jackson. I'm on there at Boxing Bush. I'm also on Blue Sky at King Typo. And if you have not listened to it, I will admonish you right now to go back and check out the 2024 Handies, with beautiful musical stylings from yours truly, and a lot of fun to be had over the course of a nearly 3.5 hour show. So go ahead and check that out on YouTube or on your podcast app of choice. Next week, we'll be back to talk to you about UFC 311. And what's coming up around the corner after that?
I don't want to look. It's going to be a letdown.
I'm going to look right now because I crave a letdown. I always crave a letdown. Adesanya versus Imavov.
Huh.
Shara Bullet Shara Bullet versus Michael Venom Page.
I guess.
It's interesting. I don't know if it's good, but I'm interested. And Sergey Pavlovich Jairzinho Rosenstruik. You said this was going to be a bummer, Phil.
You have to say it, didn't you?
Well, that'll do it. If you came here today for the finer points of Face Punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.